Everyone knows about the KLRs. They are often seen as completely indestructible, very reliable workhorses of the enduro or dual sport market. But not a lot of people talk about its smaller brother that's actually a twin cylinder, an inline twin. And I want to dedicate some time to it because it is unique, but I believe it has a bit of a identity crisis, and I want to talk about it. In the late 80s and early 90s, we saw a rise in popularity when it came to dual sport motorcycles. I believe that was mostly from their fame of the Dakar races across the desert. And who doesn't like a beefy, tall motorcycle with a very strong, reliable engine that can simply go anywhere? Well, for a lot of people, the two main bikes we think about is the Africa Twin and the Tenere, mostly the twin cylinder models, and they have a special place on the market especially. However, for a lot of new riders, those are simply, let's say, unaffordable for knowing that you might have to put the motorcycle on the floor every now and then, because that does happen. A lot of times it's easier to go for something that's a bit smaller, lighter, and cheaper. Here, the market for the Transalp is pretty expensive. However, the KLE is just a bit cheaper, and for that reason, at the time, it was worth it. However, there is an additional crucial thing that Kawasaki has done in the early 2000s to make this bike more appealing to the general public of today. They also made versions being 35 kilowatts, which around Central Europe means that you can ride them with an A2 license, meaning younger generations could also have some time on this motorcycle and a lot of fun. That's something Honda didn't do with the Transalp, which in return limited me from buying it at the time since I didn't have my full license yet. The Transalp of the 90s sits at 37 kilowatts, which is just 2 more than the legal limit for an A2 license, which is a shame. When it comes to comparing the two, the weight is pretty similar. They are both about 200 kilograms wet, meaning all the fluids included, and the shape, the styling is similar. However, the key differences being, of course, the power plant. So with the KLE500, we get an inline twin, which is a rocking couple, meaning the cylinders go like this. And the Transalp got a V-twin, which might just be the better option. And I'll tell you why. If we look at the tachometer on this motorcycle, we can see that it revs up to 11,000 RPM. Pretty common for inline engines to rev higher than V engines. But what does that tell us about the power delivery and overall smoothness of the ride? So in this case, I noticed myself not having the nicest time if anywhere below 3.5k RPM, because simply this thing loves to vibrate. It's a very shaky power plant, which in return does not give you the most comfort at the lower RPMs where you want to sit when you're, let's say, taking it easy, for example. But it also does come with its own unique sound, which I will demonstrate. I took it upon myself to add some cosmetic and functional enhancements to this motorcycle. The most important one being the windshield on the front. I believe that this windshield makes the motorcycle much more appealing in terms of looks, and it adds a nice level of comfort in the riding when there's no turbulence basically in your torso. The second one being the crash bars with the bags on the sides. Those are helpful to prevent your turn signals from falling off, and they give you a little bit of extra storage when you're planning a longer trip. I find myself packing them with tools and tire repair kits just in case the going gets tough. However, these crash bars do not protect the motorcycle from bending the foot levers, whether that is the brake lever or the shift lever. So I myself had to fix those a couple of times. While we're on the topic of body panels, they do really suffer from the vibrations of the engine. Basically, since it's rocking the whole time, you can really hear them. You can really hear the panel gaps sometimes touching just a little bit, and I had to disassemble this motorcycle multiple times already to try to find where all the vibrations are coming from and try to find different ways to suppress them. It does come with some nice accessories from the get-go, including a lovely fully metal skid plate, disc protection on the front and back, and some beautiful hand guards, which also come in handy when out in the cold to keep your hand just a little bit warmer. I also want to mention these mirrors, which have become a trend in the off-road market, where they're adjustable and simply if you fall over, they move out of the way, which is very nice. The reason why I believe we're talking about a identity crisis when it comes to this motorcycle is the power plant itself. So it derives from older Kawasaki models such as the ER5. That's basically a mid-range naked bike where I believe this engine is better suited, because on a naked, the mid to high RPMs is where you usually have it. However, I myself find that when you're on loose terrain and everything and you want to take it easy, it is much more comfortable to sit at lower RPMs and just have the low end torque. I do not want to be screaming up a hill just to be able to do it smoothly. And I believe that's where the biggest difference between this and a Transalp would be. Even a single cylinder would potentially have more torque, more low end torque than this twin. The interesting thing is that same power plant is shared with numerous styles of motorcycles. So I named the ER5, we have the KLE500, and then we have the EN models and EX as well. So there's multiple styles of motorcycles that got this engine, which I find pretty interesting because I'm not sure if it fits, but for cost effectiveness, it's an easy choice. If you want to ride tougher trails, the 200 kilos might get in your way, because that's something you're gonna have to pick up if and when it falls over. For those getting into the dual sport and enduro segment, something that you might want to consider is ABS on a motorcycle. When it comes to going downhill, it is definitely much more scary if your front wheel locks up. So the additional assistance and rider comfort is definitely something to consider when getting into the market. I was, however, impressed by the comfort of this motorcycle. You might notice that the seat is a bit different from what you would usually see on a dirt bike. It has this indent right here, and it gives you the possibility to change your seating position while riding. So if you want to be a bit more aggressive up on the front, this is extremely comfortable. And just in case that starts to hurt your inner thigh a little bit, you can push back a little bit where the weight is spread out more, and it goes a long way for a longer journey. However, the passenger seat might be a bit underwhelming. However, still really soft. So if you're in the market for this motorcycle, be sure that you know what you're getting into. If this power plant is not exactly your style, it will get old pretty soon. The lack of ABS is a bit scary, and if and when this thing falls, you will need some spare turn signals and foot levers, and surprisingly horns. So without the crash bar on this motorcycle, the horns are very much in the way of this thing falling over, so they do get bent a lot. So what is it for? Well, it's a good dual sport. It is. When it comes to being able to take it on a nice country road, whether that is asphalt or gravel ride, it does shine as long as you keep it in the mid-range RPM so that the engine doesn't rattle everything apart. I would like to try a different engine setup on an enduro motorcycle, whether that's a single cylinder thumper or a V-twin of an Africa twin or a Transalp. I believe that there is more to discover out there, and then I can truly compare what the ownership experience of different kinds of these lower end budget dual sport, maybe adventure motorcycles there is. So now you know. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another one.